hey, this is like the simplest definition that we can give you, but you still got to explore this on your own and get deeper. I don't want anyone leaving this podcast to be like, oh yeah, Sausha, I'm totally clear on that. Because you're not going to be totally clear on it until you start to practice it in your own life, which is the whole point of why we're talking about it, right? Because we're talking about how to bring these into your life, into your practice, into the knowing of yourself.
Namaste. You're listening to the Savannah Podcast. Join us on an exploration of Eastern spirituality, yoga philosophy, and conscious living for the new age. This podcast is a production of SavannahSpirit.com, the best place to shop for unique clothing, spiritual handcrafted jewelry, healing gemstones, and fair trade gifts from the Far East. Now, here's your host, Brett Larkin.
Hello, Savannah family. Welcome back to the show. If you're like me, you love learning about yoga philosophy and are always intrigued by the Yamas and the Niyamas. That's our focus today. And in particular, we're going to be talking about how to bring the yoga philosophy of the Yamas and the Niyamas into your workday. That's right, into the corporate setting, into the day-to-day grind at the office. Our guest is Awilda Rivera. She is a yoga teacher, a coach, and a spiritual advisor. She's also a former lawyer. So she's going to give us so many creative ideas of how we can bring yoga philosophy into our corporate lives. These concepts can drastically improve your workday, even if you hate your job. We're going to cover each of the yamas and niyamas in detail, how to practice them in an office setting, and how to initiate a career change with a positive appreciation for your current job. Before we dive in, 2 ways you can support the show. Please give back and show your support. It really does make a difference. The first is by making a purchase on SavannahSpirit.com. This week, I'm featuring their beautiful Tibetan copper healing bangle. This is a brass, nickel, and copper bracelet. It's gorgeous. It's said to have a healing property that can help balance the energies in the body. And it's actually handcrafted by Tibetan monks at a very specific monastery in India. You can take $25 off anything in your shopping cart on SavannahSpirit.com with the coupon code TAKE25. So make sure to use that. The second way you can support the show is just by leaving a rating or review here on iTunes. If you don't know how to do that, SavannahSpirit.com/review will walk you through step by step on how to do that. And as a special gift from me personally, if you leave a review for the show, screenshot it with your phone, email it to info@brettlarkin.com, and my team will email you a PDF thank you booklet that's full of my favorite affirmations and journaling prompts that I want to share with you as a thank you for being a supporter of the show and taking the time to leave a review. All right, now let's dive into today's conversation with Awilda. Awilda, thanks for coming back to speak to us. And I know you want to dive into how people can bring yoga philosophy into their day-to-day life at the office, at their job. And I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this. Is it possible?
I think it is, and I think people are going to be surprised that it's not in the way they think. And I'm sure some people are like, "Oh, sure, like we have a yoga person that comes in, and it's part of our health benefits package." And while I am very happy to know that so many more corporate environments are encouraging the physical aspect of yoga, today I really want to focus more on what people refer to as like the roots and the trunk of the tree of yoga, which are the yamas and the niyamas, which is essentially the philosophy of how we interact with ourselves and how we interact with the world around us. Now, a lot of people who come to yoga, if you're a super beginner, you're like, what the heck are you talking about? What you do in class is asana, which is one limb of this crazy big tree of yoga. Now, the philosophy, the underpinnings are these ideas. Now, the yamas, right, are sort of how we interact with ourselves. They're the ideas of ahimsa, nonviolence, satya, truthfulness, asteya, non-stealing, brahmacharya, non-access, or some people refer to as like discipline, asparigraha, non-attachment or non-greed. And we'll kind of tackle those first so it doesn't get too confusing. So when you get into a work environment, number one, especially in corporate, I think the idea of non-violence gets chucked out the window, like when you sign your employee agreement. And what I mean by that, I'm saying a little tongue in cheek, is non-violence also means like self-care. Like, are you sleeping enough? Are you eating right?
Are you saying negative things to yourself or negative things about coworkers in your head, right?
Exactly. Like, are you coming into the space like with a negative mentality just in general. Like, I hate being here, because that's creating a violent environment for you to be in, right? Satya, truthfulness. Like, of course, there is a sort of office diplomacy. I get it. I was a lawyer. I understand. But there is a level of integrity that we mean when we talk about Satya. So operating with your highest integrity. Are you being ethical? Like, this is very important. And I think sometimes people sacrifice their ethics for what they believe will be success, and realize later on that they have compromised both things, success and ethics, and don't end up very happy. Non-stealing, Estea. I think this is important because this is like not taking credit for other people's ideas, not pilfering from your office, little things. Now, it's one thing if their boss is like, oh God, we can't finish the current K-cups, like, please take them home. As another thing, if you're secretly looking over your shoulder, taking K-cups home. And that sounds like a really silly, small thing. But this is about your personal ethics. Like, how are you choosing to live? How are you choosing to show up in the world, right? Brahmacharya, non-excess. So it's like, are you hoarding stuff at the office? Are you trying to be like the person that everyone goes to your own detriment? Because a good leader is someone that can bring others up around them strategically. It's not someone that does it all on their own. Asparigraha goes right with that, non-attachment. Like, are you just really attached to your title, but you're not really doing your job? Or are you really attached to what someone else has, but you're not focused on what you should be doing? Like, you're like, oh man, Beth just got another promotion, blah, 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 blah. But you're like, why are you attached to Beth's promotion? That don't got nothing to do with you. Or like, oh man, I really wanted to have my weekend off, but I have to come in. It's like, well, what are you really attached to and why, right? Those, like the other episode we did, if you guys may have heard it, Brett used a great metaphor saying sometimes it's like a flashlight showing you like, hey, this is what you got to work on. So sometimes the things that you're attached to that are like, hey, I got to like let go of this stuff, right?
That could even mean like letting go of control in a particular project, right? For example.
Absolutely. Delegating responsibility, helping people to admitting where you don't have certain skills, where you need assistance. So that's very, very important. Then the 5 niyamas, which are how we interact with the world, right? The first is sausha, and some people refer to it as purity, others as cleanliness. I like to think of it as, if we're going to go straight corporate, like, what does your workspace look like? Is it a mess? Does it look like a tornado roll through there? Because it's going to be very hard for you to, you're bringing that messiness into the environment. So if you share a workspace with anyone, they have to deal with that. B, you're not going to be able to get a lot done if you don't know where anything is, right? But then also, how are you showing up with your thoughts? Are your thoughts clean? And I don't mean in an extreme way, like, you never think maybe Tom looks good in those tight pants, but it's like, are you coming in with the right heart? Are you coming in trying to be a team player? Are you coming in trying to like accomplish things for the good of the group? Or are you coming in with a selfish mindset, like just about you? Santosha, contentment. This is where I think a lot of people struggle. And it's a very nuanced concept. Now, some of you may hate your jobs, and you may hate your job because you're at a job that is ill-suited to you. That I can understand. However, the idea of contentment is not about just being happy in a crappy situation. Contentment is about being able to find the joy in the present moment and understanding the joy in whatever it is that you're actually learning from potentially being uncomfortable. Does that make sense, Brett?
It does. And I think it's also a little bit like being grateful for what little good there is. I mean, I feel like when people are stuck in a job they really don't like, it's like, well, at least this job provides you with money, which is basically an energy currency to, support your family, or it gives you health insurance or other things that, I mean, like there's always a positive spin you can put on things. But I feel like that's a little different than what you were talking about. So
no, I think, honestly, I appreciate you saying that, because while it is nuanced, right? And if there's someone who's just obviously hates their job, they need to make a change. However, I agree with what you're saying. And there is a big element of just gratitude and awareness that I personally believe plays a role in Santosha. Now, tapas, which is about training your senses. right? So it's like commitment, doing the things so that you can be aware, so that you know, oh, I'm being triggered, not just like flying off the handle every time that, your stapler is not on your desk and Tom took it. But just being like, okay, well, I know Tom is going to take my stapler. So let me have compassion because clearly Tom can't find his stapler. B, let me also train myself so I'm not flying off into a rage over an inanimate object that belongs to the company anyway, that I shouldn't be attached to, and so that I can be a more balanced person. So self-discipline, really means in this context, being able to manage your emotional response, your sort of gut response in these work situations, because you are going to be challenged. When it comes to work, and especially in a corporate environment, unless you're working for a really new age type company, you are going to be confronted. Your superiors are going to question you. People are going to be like, yo, why didn't you get it on this deadline? Like, there's going to be a lot of stuff like coming at. And if you don't have the self-discipline to be like, hey, cool, let me check myself, let me think critically, let me realize that this doesn't like define me, but it is their observation of perhaps my work product, then you're a little bit more able to navigate. Now, these last two in the niyamas are particularly close to my heart because I feel that if you forget everything else, but you remember these two, it'll kind of bring you back. So the first, the penultimate is farhaya, the idea of self-study, inner exploration. Now, and I know, Brett, that you believe in this because you have this podcast and everything you do is about encouraging people to like look within. So the idea of having a good, internal compass and having a good relationship with yourself so that you understand yourself is essential. Because if you understand yourself and you know yourself, then there's no situation crazy enough to take you out of your character. And we know that corporate environments are good for a surprise situation that will take you out of your character, like getting fired or, suddenly you have to go to China for 3 months and you just have to go and you don't really want to go, but you got to, and so kind of knowing yourself, understanding yourself, practicing self-study will allow you to navigate those situations so much better.
And I think before you go on, I just want to add on, I think, because I'm getting inspired listening to you, for that self-study, Svadhyaya, it's also where are your strengths? If you take the time to really study yourself and do that introspective work, you could really excel in the workplace because you're going to start to have more awareness around where am I strong and where am I not so strong? And how can I align myself to projects and opportunities that really play to my strengths? Do you agree?
Absolutely. And then on top of that, I would take it a step further and say, and then you can take proactive action and start filling in those skill or knowledge gaps to make you even more saleable to your higher ups and your supervisors. And, for all of you who are kind of like, yeah, well, it's not my dream job, everything is leading you someplace. So even if this isn't your dream job, you can take advantage of all the resources you have there once you have that awareness of what are the gaps you need to fill in for your next job.
Yeah.
So don't be limited by oh, well, this is not where I see myself. Okay, fine. Well, what can you get out of this? Think of it like a lemon.
I know if you're willing, I can share a story about going back to Santosha because I worked for a company in the wellness industry before I had fully my own, YouTube channel and everything set up in my own business. And I knew I wanted to have my own business. And it was so easy to get down on my job. I think so many people are, I want to be doing something else. I have a vision or a plan for something else. But I really took into account everything that Awilda is sharing with us today. And I really tried to focus on the positive aspects of the job. And because it was in the health and wellness field, I was I'm going to make every contact, you leverage this position, right? Leverage my role in this company to network, as much as possible while I'm here and be so grateful for this opportunity, even though I have a career change in mind, because it's you can go through the process of making a career change being in a very negative energetic auric field, being like super down on where you currently are, or with this like, feeling of a little bit, I think it's santosha, contentment, of like looking at the positive, taking advantage of all the opportunities that you currently have available to you, and like finding these creative ways to spin them so they actually help facilitate you getting closer to where you ultimately want to end up. And I think when you're in that energetic headspace and auric field, things happen faster. So it's not like I'm saying be content with your job that you don't like, but does that what I'm saying make sense?
It does. And I really hope, like we have been very honest that these are complex concepts. I think we're doing our best to really bring them to the simplest form, while still explaining to people like, hey, this is like the simplest definition that we can give you, but you still got to explore this on your own and get deeper. I don't want anyone leaving this podcast to be like, oh yeah, Sausha, I'm totally clear on that, because you're not going to be totally clear on it until you start to practice it in your own life, which is the whole point of why we're talking about it, right? Because we're talking about how to bring these into your life, into your practice, into the knowing of yourself.
Yeah, and I love that we're focusing on the office, because I think a lot of people are like, okay, I'll bring this into my relationship with my spouse or my kid or in my home space. But what we're really trying to inspire you listeners to do today, even if you just take a couple nuggets of wisdom away from this, it's just like this can work in a corporate environment too. So Awilda, tell us about the last niyama.
Yeah, so the last niyama is Ishvara Prandihana, which some people refer to as surrender. Some people refer to as commitment to God. Now, the latter can get a little sticky, religion stuff. So I prefer to look at it as surrendering to sort of the greater knowing of the universe. And what I mean by that is that if you ever had the belief that things are going to happen as they're supposed to, or you were at the right place at the right, or something was kismet, then you are 90% of the way there to understanding, surrendering to the magic of the universe in the way that Ishvara Pranihana means it. And in terms of how you bring this to work, right? Because you might be like, okay, well, I'm a person of faith, so I get that. Or I'm an atheist, but I could understand sort of being in the moment or trusting that something is going to work out. But like, what does that have to do with my job, right? So when it comes to your job, it's about, again, going into that well source within you and saying, oh man, today was terrible. My boss jumped down my throat. Someone ate my lunch. But you know what? At the end of the day, I am a divine being and I have like a connection to something way bigger than me. Man, I didn't get as upset as I normally would when such and such ate my lunch. And I was able to keep my cool and not get really triggered when my boss jumped down my throat. Wow, I won today.
Yeah. One thing that I wanted to add before, because I have an important final question for you, but I wanted to add about brahmacharya, right? That discipline, which we talked about when we talked about the yamas, that I encourage listeners to think about, is that could also mean discipline of like not taking your work home with you. Right? Like not thinking about all the stuff going on in the office when you're at home with your family, or setting up some boundaries because society's not setting them up for us and your job's not going to set them up for you. Like setting up some boundaries where you don't check email, or you just have discipline around like when you're choosing to work, and that abstinence, which, is also another definition of that word, actual abstinence of just not working during certain times and creating some boundaries for yourself. I think people really need that message more than ever before in this modern time.
Absolutely. And I'm glad that you highlighted that difference, because brahmacharya is more of a non-excess, a discipline of not taking too much, right? Or not doing more than you need to. Whereas tapas is more of the discipline of like, how am I interacting with this person? How, what are the words? Am I being passive aggressive? Am I being confrontational? Am I being a doormat? It's not always so much like self-correcting, but sometimes it's also about self-empowering when we talk about these things.
I love everything you shared, because I got super inspired and got so many ideas listening to you. Before we let you go, I'm wondering if you're willing to share with us, because I know you mentioned that you used to be a lawyer, so you worked in a very corporate environment, and now you are, teaching yoga, leading wellness retreats. You're also a coach, so we'll link up all her details below. What was that transition like for you of leaving corporate and going out on your own to have the business like you do today?
Oh man, I'll try to be very, very succinct. basically my entire life I wanted to be a lawyer. So I had to actually have a physical event that woke me up, which was a mild cardiac situation when I was 27. So I had to spend a night in the cardiac wing of a hospital, which causes you to realize a lot of things very quickly. At that time, I was also ending a long-term 4-year relationship with someone. And I was like, okay, well, you kind of almost died. You're with someone you don't want to be with. Clearly, despite dedicating 20 years almost to like saying you want to be a lawyer, you don't want to be a lawyer. So don't be a lawyer. I had to just get really, really honest with myself and give myself permission to be okay to change my mind, and give myself permission to be okay to not do what everyone else wanted me to do or what everyone else thought I was going to do or thought I would be so good at. And then I had to really work hard and drill down to like what is it that I really want to do, which was help people. And like it's actually just like Brett said, when you study yourself enough, then you realize what you're really good at and you're able to capitalize on that. So, I forced myself to really like figure it out. I realized that yes, I've always wanted to help people, and I've been essentially coaching and advising people since I was 14 years old. So I was like, well, obviously this is what I need to be doing. I've also had spiritual gifts, clairvoyance, clairaudience, all that since I was a very young child, and was like, well, obviously I can use this to help people too. And when I had my experience of yoga, my personal release, my personal healing, I was like, well, obviously this is the third part. This is the sort of the roof on my house of helping to heal people. The spiritual is the foundation. The coaching is the, the walls and the floor and the stuff, and the yoga is the roof. And so for me, that's what's created my like entrepreneurial house. And everything that I've created from there has just been an offshoot of a way that I can more directly connect with people. So like that's why I started the podcast, because it's like, listen, I wish I could coach every person in the world. That would be very hard. So how can I get as close to that as possible? Okay, I'll release this podcast. I wish I could share the experience of traveling with everyone in the world. Can't necessarily do that, but how can I get close to that? Okay, I'll do these trips. So that's sort of my transition has been very much like that, very much organic, very much calculated, but also not a straight line by any means at all. And being okay with having some setbacks and having some mistakes.
I love that you shared with us so honestly, how you made that big transition, and hopefully it's really helpful for the listeners to hear if they're, thinking of making a big change. They don't have to wait until they have, a cardiac issue if they want to do it. And your story is so inspiring. So Savannah listeners, if you want to connect with Awilda, I'm putting her website, links to her coaching, everything in the show notes. You can see that right below. I hope you enjoyed today listening to Awilda and I riff on these ideas of how you can bring the Yamas and the Niyamas into your life at work. And we want to hear your ideas because this is very much just an exploration, and we're hoping that you had some cool insights as well. So if you want to share them, the best way to do that is in the Savannah private Facebook group. You can go to savannahspirit.com/group. We can approve you as a member. And as a reminder, your ratings and reviews here on iTunes are what keep the show going. So if you don't know how to leave a review on iTunes, just go to savannahspirit.com/review, because I know it's really tricky and it's hard to do on your phone. We have step-by-step instructions, and your ratings and reviews keep the show going and mean the world to me. I'm wishing you a beautiful day full of yoga and meditation. So much love from my heart to yours. Namaste.
You've been listening to the Savannah Podcast. To find out more about Savannah, go to savannahspirit.com or follow Savannah on Facebook at facebook.com/Savannah Spirit. For daily inspiration, check out our blog at savannaeast.com. Be sure to join us next week for a new episode, and thank you for listening to the Savannah Podcast.